The Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
Since 4 years old, Silas Hurd has suffered from seizures.
It's considered a childhood epilepsy mostly because the kids who get it don't survive into adulthood.
The seizures were counted in the hundreds per month.
Silas was losing his ability to put sentences together, understand what we were saying.
In their desperate search for a cure, his parents stumbled across an oil made from cannabis.
Of a very specific strain.
This is 8-year-old Silas now. His seizures are down by 90%.
We have to accept, as parents, that we're going to have to watch our child slowly seize to death and then find something that worked. It was like magic. It was a miracle. It was one of the most amazing things we'd ever come across.
Now that medicine is being taken away. In January, the Nevada County Board of Supervisors voted to ban outdoor medical marijuana grows and limit indoor grows. The strain Silas relies on is only cultivated locally outdoors.
They're very rare, and you have to grow a lot of them to get enough to make these reductions.
Now the county wants voters to decide. In an email supporting the ban, the Nevada County Republican Party chairwoman writes, "The commercial growers are using an unfortunate child as a publicity stunt."
The growers are basically exploiting this unfortunate child's circumstances as if that's an excuse as to why the commercial growers used to have more outdoor growth.
Personally, it's hurtful. He's not an unfortunate child. He's a child with a very rare condition.
Chairwoman Deborah Wilder stands by her words.
I think the child is suffering from a horrible disease, and this community should do whatever we can to try and support, his treatment and his recovery.
Meanwhile, outdoor marijuana cultivation in Nevada County has come to a halt, meaning Silas only has 4 months' worth of medicine left.
That's their stance, is that, yes, it's real, yes, it's valid, but it's unfortunate that he's just going to not be able to be treated so that we can do this.
And possibly die.
Absolutely, possibly die.
Hurd filed a writ challenging several parts of the June ballot measure known as Measure W. He's also filed a temporary restraining order to block the ballots from being printed. That will be heard in Nevada County Superior Court tomorrow.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
It's the Full Melt.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
Did you hear what he said right there at the end of that piece? He said he was going to do something to block the ballots, a temporary restraining order to block the printing of the ballots? What is this, communist China? Are we in the red states of Mother Russia during the Soviet Union? Are we in communist Cuba? I mean, really, what in the hell is going on with people who think that they could use somehow a legal system that's supposed to be by the people, of the people, for the people, under the Constitution of our great United States of these Americas? I think that you got to be very cautious about how you use the tools and really who pays the price. Is it just the person that filed the suit? I mean, really, you're going to use some kind of court process and injunction to prevent the ballots from being printed? What, you don't like the process? Is that what you're telling us? I mean, I just wonder under what auspice, under what terms, under which rules you're asking the court to stop the printing of a public ballot. How does that happen, pray tell ye? That's what I want to know. To the extent to which people who have either been sold this bill of goods as truth and the American way, or as people who would rather place children like this along with cancer patients and many other chronically ill people and throw them completely under the bus over the idea that somebody somewhere might sometime get high. F and you. Who the hell do you think you are? And when does your cry for public safety, which is a complete falsity, When does your cry for public safety overrule the rights of these people to seek medicine that seems to be working for them and the alternative of big pharma, which is not? Because that's the only pathway to these places where people are getting these medicines. These are last-ditch alternatives where pharmaceutical drugs have failed them for whatever reason. How can you let a situation like that stand? On which planet, in which universe does this make any sense whatsoever? And how does it not incense you? Those are the answers that I want to know. As this political football gets tossed back and forth, people want to say that, oh, you're using the guise of medical marijuana as just a big farce. It's just a big skirt to hide behind so you can have your recreational weed. Booey for you. Let's just take, for example, let's just for argument's sake, say that you're correct. Let's just take that assumption into play. Just for argument's sake. And say for one moment that a few people might be getting high. What's wrong with it? Not, that they might be getting high somewhere? And nobody's flapping their arms off the top of a building. Nobody's going crazy playing the piano, puffing the room into a cloud of smoke. I mean, these are all stereotypes that have been sold you as truth when they're nothing more than just a great big giant lie. And what would be the reasoning behind this? What would be the impetus behind such an opposition, such a ridiculous opposition? Given that we've already again answered this question umpteen decades ago with prohibition. I mean, we've already decided that when the cure is worse than a disease, that you got to stamp it out. You got to get rid of the cure. And in this place, in Prohibition's instance, the disease that was claimed to be in place was alcohol and alcoholism and all of its dastardly deeds. And there are a lot of them, admittedly. That somehow that needed to be stamped out because somehow the federal government could take the position like the rest of the states did at one point and say, you can't do this here. They figured out that you can't stop it. The rum runners, all the people that were the speakeasies. I mean, the secret movement under the veil of prohibition of alcohol, of alcoholic spirits in volume, was not stopped. Despite the interdiction, despite the massive public claims of big alcohol busts, nobody ever stopped the flow of alcohol. And in fact, the only thing that happened was they created this gigantic black market, which went awry on them. They got bigger and stronger than the federal government did, with weapons and blood spilt in the streets. And suddenly, more people were being killed by the prohibition of alcohol than were being killed by actual alcohol. And people raised a flag on the pole and said, we give up this fight. If you're going to have your booze, at least we're going to put some rules in place and take control of this so that bad people don't get a hold of the big, bold money made when you create a black market. And the likes of Al Capone's of the world faded away. Now, again, I asked the question because it's not been answered and I haven't answered it myself. Why in the world, what would be the pressure, what would be the position from which somebody would come to claim all of that ridiculous nonsense in the face of all of this other obvious, factual, historically based evidence? What could it be? Could it be perhaps investment? Could it be perhaps control of people? Could it be perhaps racism? No, not that. It can't be racism. You're going to pull the race card? Absolutely, I'm pulling the race card because it's exactly what it is. The same way that people in the South and people basically of the conservative party want to, on the one hand, claim that they're Christians and they're evangelicals and they love to go and spread the word of Christ across this great planet of ours. On the other hand, want to prevent people from voting. There might be some voter fraud going on here. And it might be big enough that it could sway an election. We can't let voter fraud happen. People have to identify themselves with official identification before they vote. Now, wait a minute. Wouldn't their voter card be good enough? I mean, why does your particular state, and where's the evidence in the first place that some voter fraud has ever gone on at all? Is there some claim of voter fraud that's happening? Is there somebody saying somebody's trying to rig a ballot box somewhere? Is that where this is coming from? Absolutely not. It's coming from a false claim because they just don't want you to vote. For those who've managed to stick through the idea that they are no longer enfranchised with their country because they've been completely, in fact, disenfranchised with their country over politics because the system is broken. For those who still stuck it through and despite all of this disparity surrounding our political system, decide to control the only thing that they can in this system, and that's their vote for a candidate. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, at least they had their say at the ballot box. Those are the people that they're still trying to somehow discourage from voting. And this election season, and I say season because it's exactly what it is. It is indeed an entire system. It's a season. It's got mechanics to it. There's a beginning and a middle and an end and a story being told. The question is the story that's being told a natural story? Or is this a story that's being told by design? It would be merely simple to connect dots and make the claim that somehow the story that's being told to us during this election cycle is by design. That it is scripted in a way. That there's a plan and a strategy beyond what might be apparent. Now, those are the tinfoil hat wearers of the world. I am not one of them. I would say, however, that this election cycle, being a free-willed election cycle, is absolutely critical to the question of whether or not there will be legal cannabis of any kind available in any state, anywhere in these United States of America. It's a question we'll answer this November and this November alone.
You're getting the full melt.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RudoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
RootMetrics, in the nation's largest independent study, tested wireless performance across the country. Verizon won big with 153 state wins. AT&T got 38, Sprint got 2, and T-Mobile got 0. Verizon also won first in the U.S. for data, call, speed, and reliability. AT&T got text. Stuck on an average network? Join Verizon, and we'll cover your cost to switch.
It's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. 71.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release.
We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade. You got this.
Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki.
Sacred Elements.
Raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Dordt Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570. It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Hey, did you know we're on an app? There's an app for that. It's in the iStore, or the App Store, rather. The iStore. Now go on to the iStore and see what you find there. Oh, God. It is Friday, right? I think it is. Yeah, you can go to the App Store from Apple, or you can also go to Google Play and download this customized Spreaker app for just this show only. Working on another release for a different application that'll not only have our show, but other shows on it as well. Welcome back to the Full Melt Show. I'm your host, Steve Green, and later on during the program, I just want to point out that we're going to cover this a bit about a petition to seek medical marijuana as legalized in Idaho has been withdrawn. We'll talk about that. And if you think for one moment, you see, there's this news. Remember the news last fall and early this spring about the relaxation of federal availability to prosecute in states where people are unambiguously obeying their state's modified position on marijuana. And that would, I suppose, include both states that have legalized cannabis for adult use. Nothing wrong with this responsible adult use of anything, I would say. And then also, if you're going to indulge, you're going to indulge, but responsible adult use is really what people are looking for, isn't it? Who can argue with responsible adult use? It's the irresponsible stuff that gives people a problem. If you think for one moment that the federal government is no longer putting people in jail over marijuana, think again. This according to channel3000.com. 6 charged in $2 million federal marijuana case. This is out of Wisconsin, Dateline, Madison. 6 people have been indicted on a marijuana case involving more than $2 million in drug proceeds, according to a release from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Madison. The 6 men are accused of shipping pot from Oregon to Wisconsin, conspiring to distribute more than 220 pounds of marijuana. All face a minimum of 5 years in federal prison with a maximum of 40 years in prison if convicted of a conspiracy charge. They're also charged with multiple money laundering counts, and each faces a maximum of 20 years in prison on each money laundering count if convicted. The indictment says the men shipped marijuana to Wisconsin and elsewhere and then deposited marijuana proceeds into accounts at banks with branches in Oregon, Wisconsin, and other locations where marijuana was shipped. And then it lists the men. There was an indictment returned on January 27th, according to the report, and was recently unsealed. A trial now scheduled to begin in September. It's a long time from now. Whatever happened to quick and speedy trial? Right to a speedy trial. I suppose there are those that decide to give up their right to a speedy trial. What would be the advantage of not having a speedy trial to either side? Well, I can tell you the first and most obvious advantage to not having a speedy trial where there are paid lawyers involved. Not the one that got a couple $100 from the county or the court for, taking care of somebody who's indigent, who claims that they don't have the money to afford an attorney. They have the right to one. And many places now, even though they don't have the money for it, will conclude and make them make an agreement right there with the court that you'll pay them back the $200 or $250 or $300, whatever it is, that they give the court-ordered counsel. And that's what it is. It's court-ordered. You see, if you have a court-ordered attorney, it doesn't mean boo on a criminal charge. It's just meeting the minimal framework to say that you had due process in play. And they've managed to work around the idea that one will be given you at state's expense. Nobody's doing the state's expense thing anymore that I know of. I don't see any place where you're going in and the state's just providing you with a public defender. It's how it used to be for so many years. You could see it play out in media for decades, where you're portrayed as having a public defender provided at state's expense, given that you can't afford one. But I would say even then, and because of the system and the way it's designed, that these attorneys have no real intent in vigorously defending you whatsoever. And it really goes against the bar, but you can't hold it against these attorneys for the idea that I've been burdened by the court with your defense, and I'm not going to get paid hardly anything for it. In fact, if I spend any time on this is actually going to cost me personally money for representing this now court-burdened client. So their object, if you get one of these public defenders, remember, they're not being really paid by the state. These are private attorneys who've been ordered to take you on as a client for a bare bones minimum price that the court has determined somehow. And it's usually in the neighborhood of $200 or $300 at the most. And most of these courts are somehow demanding that in order to give you this public defender, that you're going to make some arrangement to pay the court back for the money paid on your behalf. And it drives me absolutely insane, the idea that in this day and age, especially coming from a party who wants a new Supreme Court justice to read the plain language of the law and apply it accordingly, how can you have these defendants being given court-appointed attorneys where there's no vested interest of said representation by way of attorney? I mean, it's the only legal representation you're allowed to have in court is a lawyer. You can't bring somebody who knows about the law. You can't bring somebody who's a paralegal. You can't bring somebody who's got a law degree in and have them represent you unless and until they've passed the state's bar exam. They have to be a member of the bar, an officer of the court. That's the only pathway to it as a defender, as an attorney. It doesn't matter if you're doing business law or if you're doing, defense. It doesn't matter what brand of law you're practicing. You have to be a member of the bar. And in the long run, you have this system where literally 90 to sometimes even as high as 95% of all people being convicted are doing so by scare tactic. They're doing so by what they would call a plea bargain. They're striking a plea deal. Well, let's see. In the art of the deal, let's just talk about the art of the deal for a minute. Because here's a good example of the art of the deal. You're a car salesman, but you don't sell used or new cars. You sell used cars. And you've got this awesome deal for $5,000. You spent $5,000 on the car, but man, the thing looks like it's worth $15,000. So you got $5,000 into it, and you got to say, the thing looks like $1 million, and it's got decent miles on it. It runs good. It's not that old. You only got $5,000 into it, but the street value is closer to like $13,000 or $14,000. And then you got somebody that comes in and wants to buy it and wants to, talk the price down a little bit. And you're willing to maybe work a little bit on the price because, after all, you've got a lot of profit margin to work there with. But eventually, if you strike a deal with this person and you're getting an auto loan, or they've got some other incentive in place, like they advertise with a push, pull, and drag promotion where, push, pull, or drag it in, and we'll give you $1,500 for whatever it is that you can dump off of the dump truck. And some people have and do. And the dealership will still get the scrap price out of whatever it is that you drug in there. They're not going to try and rehab it and sell it. But what they are going to do is whatever incentive they gave you on the front end as a sales pitch, bring that push, pull, or drag in. Or, if you're a member of a certain popular credit union in our area, we'll give you automatic $2,000 cash down on your car deal. We'll give you a $2,000 voucher towards the down payment on your car. I mean, that's $2,000. It's a great sales pitch, isn't it? Well, if you think about it, at the other end of that deal, you see, remember, you had a car that the guy was, he's got $5,000 into, and he's willing, it's worth like maybe 13 or 14 if you get the full book value out of it, but they're going to talk you down a little bit, so let's call it $10,000. And you just gave him a promotional offer for $2,000, which if you left it at $10K for the price, you'd only be making $3,000 on that car because you're going to sell it for a grand total of $8,000. But a car dealership will never do that because the incentive they gave you for that $2,000 down payment on the front end of this deal, so it makes the paperwork look all good and you get that deal done through the financing company because after all you put $2,000 down, you've got some investment in this car. You're not going to let this go off and get repossessed. You're going to take care of this because you've got some money invested into it. You've got some skin in the game. It greases the deal, makes the deal go better. But they're not going to sell you that car for $10,000. They're going to offer you that car for $12,000 and maybe even a little bit more. This is the same thing going on in the world of politics and money and education and banking. And any place where big business decides that it can maybe pull a little sleight of hand to prop up the bottom line a little bit, give the investment a little bit more for their return, make the books look good so the stock prices go up and people walk home with a big, fat, happy check. There's nothing wrong with making money in America. But when you have a situation where prisons are being privatized and the cost of that agreement, the cost of something for business to step in and make an agreement with the government, be it state or federal, to take over a prison system is to populate that prison by a scale of 90%. In other words, in order to make this 20-year deal with the state to take over the prison and use its current budget more efficiently, more effectively than the government otherwise could, so lays the claim, the business people won't make that deal with the government for the privatization of this prison or any other unless they've got a deal that says you're going to make sure that this prison, we're going to get paid for 90% capacity. Now, that makes great sense from the standpoint of a business person because, hey, we're going to get paid at 90% and we've got room for 10% growth until we're at capacity. And you know what? Sometimes prisons get to go over capacity because nobody wants to pony up the bucks to make the prison a little bit bigger. Now, what do you think the strategy to make sure people are in prison to meet the demands, because look, the state's going to pay for that capacity. They're paying for those beds. They're paying for that food. And it's all going right into the hands of privatized businessmen unless and until they can fill that prison up with worthy prisoners. Members of the citizenry that have been plucked aside and said you no longer belong in the general population of the public at large because somehow you present a danger to yourself and others. And somehow we need to punish you for something that you've done out in the street, even though there may be no victim in your crime. There are people who are in jail for nothing more than, say, a money issue. Yes, there may be some victims involved with that money issue, and there may be a problem. And yes, should it be a crime? Probably yes. But are you going to imprison this person at a higher expense to the public than what the cost of the crime was in general from the first place? Who's doing the bean counting on this? And so then you have the rise of Senator Bernie Sanders in a sea of all this political rhetoric. And also, chorus being sung by Hillary Clinton from the background about how we need to modify and change our criminal justice system. Let me just give you a clue. It's not just the criminal justice system, which not only needs to be overhauled, it needs to be completely looked at and modernized. Because we're still using techniques and principles in our criminal justice system that were invented and deployed hundreds of years ago. It's much like our education system. Nothing's ever been modified. Nobody's ever stopped and said, there's a better way to do this. There's a more efficient way to do this. There are better incentives to do this. Nobody. Tell me why in this day and age we still have 3 months that go by every year for students in school for the summer vacation. What is the summer vacation? Is it a chance for children to grow at a latchkey age where parents are busy working and they can't be minded back at home during the summer? Is that what it is? Is it an added expense for babysitters? Yes, probably that too. Is it a boost to the economy? Perhaps it is. But it no longer serves the original purpose of when they decided to split the year up into 7 and 3 like this. Minus the other vacation days and school days and snow days and whatever else days they get. Okay, 8 and 3. We'll just call 1 month the float days. Nobody ever stopped to think and figure out. The original purpose of them having this summer vacation was to work at the farm. Because, back in the day, back in those golden days, we needed those kids home working the farm because there weren't any, it was costly and expensive, and you needed that harvest to survive as a family. It's not like that anymore. You go to Walmart, for crying out loud. When are we going to modernize our courts and our government?
You're getting the full melt.
I've seen things no man should bear, and those that every man should dare. From the beaches of Normandy to the far reaches of the earth. In my life, I have lived millions of lives. I've outrun robots and danced with dinosaurs. I've faced the faces of fear and fortitude and witnessed great beauty in the making. I've kept the company of kings and queens, but I'm no royalty or saint. I've traveled, trekked, wandered, and roamed, only to find myself right where I belong.
Jeep. See your authorized Jeep retailer for details on how you can become a Jeep owner.
We asked people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Where you can normally reach us Monday through Friday right here at thefullmelt.com or on Spreaker or our customized Spreaker app. Soon to be the working title is Wax App. It's a working title. I wanted to call our new application, Canalydoscope is what I wanted to call it. I thought Canalydoscope had a ring to it. Might do that, I'm not sure. I wish you could hold a vote on that. I was talking to you earlier about, the criminal justice system and the modification of many things inside our government. Our founding fathers really actually never designed, they never imagined for even a span of 20 years that people wouldn't decide to hold another constitutional convention and change things a little bit as things changed. I mean, these were brilliant people that came up with our Constitution, but it was created in a time and a day that was different than today's day and age. And so we look to people like the Supreme Court to make constitutional rulings based on something that took place that couldn't have even taken place during the time at which the Constitution was written. I mean, does anybody besides myself find it interesting at all that people would want to ask a question of the high court whose only job it is to determine whether or not something is legal under the Constitution? That's all they're there to decide. Is the question before the court a constitutional one? And if it is the question before the court violating said Constitution? I mean, this was written at a time when the issue before the court could never have existed. Say, for an example, an issue between the FCC and somebody with a free speech issue. So it's a First Amendment issue, right? It has constitutional attachment. And now we go to the fathers of our the fathers of our court system, really, the Supreme Court. They're not the fathers. Horrible way to represent them. We go to the Supreme Court, the people who are supposed to be elected as experts on the subject of the constitutionality of every subject that could be leaned their way. And on this question, on these questions, don't you think it would make more sense that the Constitution was modified to include clear language about the yeses and the nos, the do's and the don'ts of this new thing that happened way after the Constitution was created? Let's say, for example, if it were to, move the analogy forward in time, somebody created and invented a time machine, and then somebody had a constitutional question, a legal question with regards to time travel. How are you supposed to ask this question when we don't know about it yet? It hasn't been invented. So the founding fathers decided when they molded together this, they stitched together the language of our Constitution, the fabric of these United States of America, that they would give the states an ability to call a constitutional convention for just that purpose. Yet hardly ever has one been called. And so I ask you this. Do you think that it's too much to ask of our now broken government, where corruption has weaned its way in and taken root and poisoned the entire political and legal tree in this country? Do you think it's still an impossibility that you could get states together and decide that we need to make modification to our Constitution? If indeed people want to have guns, and it needs to be clearly said that you're allowed to have X number of guns under X, Y, and Z circumstances, why don't you just enshrine it into the Constitution? I don't think a lot of people would say, oh, don't tinker with that golden Constitution. Look, it was meant to be tinkered with. It wasn't meant to be biblical in nature or proportion. It was meant to be modified and changed with the times as people learned new things were invented, and new questions were asked. Because don't you think it would make more sense to take a hold of an issue and make some law about it, even if you have to adjust the Constitution to do it under certain circumstances, than to just let it go by and be frustrated under the circumstance that the Constitution doesn't allow a popular idea? It's not even a constitutional question as to the illegality of things like cannabis or the scheduling of substance and putting them in a criminal code that requires mandatory minimum sentencing and all these crazy ideals that are designed to prop up a situation in a prohibitionist market that has never achieved a single stated goal. It's absolute nonsense. And I don't think anybody with a proper head on their shoulders can examine this when they see the full facts in front of them, given that they're able to get that view. Because many people want to obscure that view from as many as possible. If you just catch pieces of it, you can argue it and it falls apart. If you just catch this part over here or that part over there, you can argue it and it falls completely apart. But if you get the whole view, the big picture, all the information, which is a lot of information, you can nearly be immoved from the position that this is an entire farce and tremendously wasteful of our scarce public resources. I mean, it's kind of like the governor, Mr. Snyder, and even Congress themselves are acting and responding to the Flint question rather than digging up and rolling up their sleeves and finding a way, the money, the willpower, the political capital to spend on fixing this disaster in Flint. That they'd rather spend a few extra dollars on shuffling it under the rug, kicking the can down the road, letting continuance of this situation where people have poisoned kids. So there's this medical question at hand. There's a legal question at hand as to who's responsible and who gets to pay for the damage that's already been done, not to mention the existing problem at hand. The water is still being poisoned by a corroded system for which there's no money and no action being taken in a reasonable way to correct it. How many more cities like this need to have a similar situation happen before major cities have crumbling infrastructures that cave in on them by design? If you don't repair the roof, it's going to leak. And if it leaks inside the house, it's going to make it unlivable. This is what we're doing with our water system, our electrical grid, our entire energy structure. There's a lot of money being made in these sectors, but they're not investing it in infrastructure unless it's expansion. And that expansion ever increases the load on an already burdened and crumbling system, which, if it fails, causes major security issues. I mean, not only do you have rioting and looting because everybody knows that communication systems are down, the power is out, and so the only places that have actual recordings going on where there's any real followable security, any what they would call forensic evidence of a crime being committed, the only places that have that accessible during these times would be people who have battery backups, generators. I mean, am I the only one that remembers all the chaos injected into the daily life of American citizens when we went from 1999 to 2000 and everybody was worried about the Y2K bug? The fact that computers were only designed to know a certain number of numbers because nobody, when they started designing computers, had the foresight to think that we might want to build into our system an ability to recognize dates past the year 2000? And what chaos that might cause to anything with computer system controls, satellites, technicians, communications, telephone, even at the time, the then building and youthful internet, banking, business at large. There was panic in the streets. I mean, people were writing specials on this. You could watch stuff about this on television and hear it on the radio all day long, including during the mainstream news. The Y2K bug, it's going to hit, and everybody better be prepared. And then started the Doomsday Preppers. This country's better wake up and find answers to solutions quickly and stop proposing ridiculous politicians like the ones we've got in place now. The Democrats have the only resembling acceptable politicians, political candidates up on the plate. The rest of them, they're over on the Republican side, I think are complete crackpots. Then the evidence is in Chris Christie after firing major firebombs across the fence at Donald Trump, standing behind him nearly a day after the last time he lobbed one of those fireballs. Making faces behind the Trumpster. You could see the gears turning. Maybe I can sweep in on the coattails of Mr. You're Fired. I mean, really, this has turned into public spectacle about hand sizes and innuendo over penises. I mean, it's just gotten stomach turning. These are people that we want to consider to have the clout, the respectability, the electability, the presence of mind and forethought to have some kind of way of editing one's thoughts before one speaks, be thoughtful and representative of a nation at large, an intelligent population of a first world order. The same guy with the keys to the nuclear football, you're going to give it to, oh, did you see the size of his hands? You're going to give it to that guy, right? Come on. You're going to see some chaos happen at the Republican convention this year. Absolute, injected, with great pressure and giant money, chaos when Trump starts to sweep. And he's already in the process of making that move. Also in the news, we're talking about the news of people going to jail for cannabis. I mean, it still happens. Not only were those 6 charged in Wisconsin, but then Fayetteville, there's a drug bust there, netting marijuana, pills, and $12,500 in cash. It's right there at 5snewsonline.com. Every day, there's at least 2 of these 10 top stories about pot that are criminally related, have nothing to do with medical or retail cannabis or drug policy reform. When we come back from the break, I want to talk about this petition seeking to legalize medical marijuana in Idaho being withdrawn. It's a big story, and it's coming up next.
You're getting the full melt.
Promotional consideration provided by NoSmell.com, pioneering the storage market for cannabis users. The No-Smell patented bag technology offers users 100% smell-proof detection from even the most sophisticated of noses. NoSmell.com, so nobody knows. When placing your order for a no-smell bag, make sure to use discount code FULLMELT and take 10% off the entire order. Learn more about no-smell technology at nosmell.com.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road. Take care when passing. And always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RudoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the Allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. 571. It's the Full Melt Radio Show. 844-420-TALK if you want to make a last-minute chime in. Toll free to the program here. 844-420-TALK. It is toll free. That's 844-420-8255. Is this a story I wanted to talk about? No. I'm going to play it anyways. This is the shortest segment we have, I think, of the whole hour, but I'm going to play this little segment. It's going to probably make me watch some stupid commercial, so I got something else to tell you in the meanwhile, but let's just see if it's going to get that far. Sometimes it'll make you watch the commercial. Sometimes it'll go right to the story. In this case,
complex and endlessly fascinating.
It's a commercial.
Each week we'll break through the noise with insights into what's really going on behind the curtain of political theater. God. A dialogue with decision makers. Hard-hitting, balanced coverage of the issues that impact our future.
Political coverage for a new generation of voters. Matter of Fact with Fernando Espuelas.
Join me here on WVTM 13 Saturday evening at 6:30.
Oh, God. Oh, I'm glad I don't live there. Here we go. Is this the same story? It might be. No, it can't be.
But researchers say there is still a lot they need to learn about this form of medical marijuana. The UAB's Department of Neurology is currently working with Children's of Alabama to see how a special form of medical marijuana can treat severe seizures. This medicine is called cannabidiol or CBD oil.
See, it's all across the country.
They started their study last April, and here is what they found so far. Out of 51 patients in this study, 51% saw an overall sustained improvement in seizure control over a 6-month period. 32 to 45% saw declines in their seizures. 2 of the patients were seizure-free, and 9 patients had to drop out of this study because they saw no improvements or they had severe side effects. Now, researchers stress there is still.
Yeah, so this is what they're doing. This was from WVTM channel 13 at WVTM.com. Looks like it's coming out of let's see where it's coming out of. Birmingham, Alabama. You see, it's coming out of one of them Bible Belt and red states where we don't like your marijuana. We don't take your marijuana in Muskogee. You get up there, you Yankee. You take your marijuana with you. We'll throw your ass in jail, you redneck. A redneck calling a redneck. I love it. You got this going on everywhere. I mean, it's the same argument. The first argument that you get through the door with the people who are like, you can't bring pot here, is this argument about kids and seizures. And so they do their own little studies. They're smaller groups. You don't think that they would take the study from another state that's already examined this question in detail. There's a number of them before Alabama came along and started nitpicking at this. And here's what I have a problem with these studies in the first place, because if you're just using CBD by itself for seizure control, you're missing the boat on the human endocannabinoid system, completely missing the boat. Many times, if you include these other components in cannabis along with the CBD, you get amazingly different results that are much better than the ones she just quoted to you in that news piece. Also, Warnings pulled. This is another one of these legal arguments. In New Orleans, according to NOLA.com for New Orleans, Louisiana, warnings pulled from proposal to soften marijuana possession in New Orleans. And what they're talking about in that headline is the idea that in order to soften possession charges, we're going to take out the language that said we can issue warnings. And why would you want to do that as a policymaker? Well, you're going to affect the tax dollars coming in because really we call it, fines and fees associated with crime. But if you find a way to allow people to get warnings over pot possession, guess what? Oh, the police and the courts, they suffer. They don't get the money. They don't get that tax money. So that's tax money that keeps those people afloat. Better to grind people through the criminal justice system and keep those court employees and keep those lavish buildings burning the midnight oil. I mean, here's this one. See, I'm going to play you this piece. Let's see if it plays. It's got to play.
Looking for fun for everyone?
It makes me watch a commercial. I hate you people. Yeah, I know. So there's a casino commercial ahead of the guy that says, no, don't bring your medical pot here. We can't do with your stupid, you can't have warnings for pot. Go to the casino and buy booze and gamble your money away instead.
Where you feel at home, where you're always welcome. Because at this beauty on Back Bay, it's fun for everyone. IP Casino Resort Spa Biloxi.
Yeah, bullshit. That's all I got to say. Here we go.
It's not time for us to give an opinion about that. Since 2014, we changed our policy to give summonses in lieu of arrest, and we've done that. And so the majority of the encounters where we have people with some possession of marijuana, they receive a summons from the police department. So right now it's too premature to give opinions about what we think about it. Right now it's still illegal because it's still a drug.
See, it's still illegal. It's still a drug. You're still going to grind you through the system, whether we arrest you on the spot or give you a summons to show up in court. We're still taking your money. We're still labeling you as not fit for the public. You can't get employed after this, Mr. Pot Possessor. They're still doing that crap. Drives me absolutely insane. And then there's this last argument, and the one that I teased before the commercial break, and that's the idea that a petition to seek medical marijuana has been pulled from the shelves in Idaho. This according to, let me see, this is the INDnews.com. Dateline Boise. The initiative seeking to decriminalize 3 ounces of marijuana and legalize medical marijuana in Idaho has been withdrawn. The petition inaccurately stated that the American Academy of Pediatrics endorsed medical access to marijuana. The APP, in letters to New Approach Idaho, Inc.'s board members, dated February 19th, states, this language misrepresents the American Academy of Pediatrics policy statement. The APP opposes legalization of marijuana because of the potent harms to children and adolescents. Oh, they want to say there are potent harms, but they hold up absolutely no statistics or stats, as you might abbreviate it, to stand behind that claim. It's a hollow claim. We request that the New Approach Idaho Incorporated cease using the American Academy of Pediatrics name in its existing ballot initiative materials immediately. I'm very pleased that the marijuana legalization petition has been withdrawn. It's well known that marijuana use adversely affects the health and developing brains of children and adolescents, and legalization increases access to this harmful drug. So today it's a great day for the health and safety of Idaho's children, said this crazy lady, administrator of the Idaho Office of Drug Policy. Yes. Oh, yes, it's a great day because you guys get to keep putting people in jail over a false claim, a hollow claim, a claim that has absolutely no real evidence attached. It's really only been examined by the institution, by the federal institution, the federal branch of your public safety friends at NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Now, I don't know if you work for a corporation or a company of any type, but anytime you've been given a budget to manage that department, in this case, the Institute of Drug Abuse, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, who, by the way, hold the keys to the only federal marijuana garden in the country, and all access to medical examination and research for this purpose, where they deny at every corner and turn the possibility that marijuana might have a medical use. This is if you work in one of these organizations, little cubicles, you understand that if you don't spend your budget, you don't justify your budget, it gets taken from you. And the chief purpose of the National Institute on Drug Abuse is to justify its own existence. It'll never do a study on the safety and efficacy, the medical value of marijuana.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.